Saint Cyrus and St. John, the Martyrs. The main source of information regarding the life, passion and miracles of Saint Cyrus and St. John is the Encomium, written by Sophronius, Patriarch of Jerusalem. Now, when reading the lives of the saints, it's fascinating to see their early years, what led them to such ways, their transformation, if you will. However, when it comes to Saint Cyrus and John and their early years, what we have is nothing. Now, what we can find is, according to the Arabic Synaxarium, compiled by Michael, Bishop of Athrib and Malig, Cyrus and John were both Alexandrians. This, however, is contradicted by other documents, in which it is said that Cyrus was a native of Alexandria and John of Edessa. Nonetheless, we have some really good information on the lives of both saints. We read Cyrus practiced the art of medicine and had a workshop which was afterwards transformed into a temple dedicated to Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, who are figures from the book of Daniel in chapter 3. The three Jewish men are thrown into the fire by Nebuchadnezzar II, king of Babylon, for their refusal to bow to the king's image. The three are preserved from harm, and the king sees four men walking in the flames, the fourth like a son of God. Many Christians believe this person in the fiery furnace with Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego is Jesus. We read Cyrus ministered to the sick, taking nothing in return, and at the same time laboured with all the ardour of an apostle of the faith, and won many from pagan superstition. He would say, "Whoever wishes to avoid being ill should refrain from sin, for sin is often the cause of bodily illness." This was all taking place under the Emperor Diocletian, who was the driving force behind the great persecution of Christians in the early 4th century. We then read Cyrus fled to Arabia, where he took refuge in a town near the sea called Zotan. There, having received the tonsure and assumed the monastic habit, he abandoned medicine and began a life of asceticism. John, on the other hand, belonged to the army, in which he held a high rank. Hearing of the virtues and wonders of Cyrus, he went to Jerusalem in fulfillment of a vow, then passed to Alexandria and then to Arabia, where he became the companion of Saint Cyrus in the ascetic life. During the persecution of Diocletian, three holy virgins, Theopista, Theodora, and Theodoxia, together with their mother, Athanasia, were arrested at Canopus and brought to Alexandria. Cyrus and John, fearing lest these girls, on account of their youth, might in the midst of torments deny the faith, resolved to go into the city to comfort them and encourage them in undergoing martyrdom. This fact becoming known, they were too arrested and dire torments. After dire torments, they were all beheaded. According to tradition, the saints were buried at the Church of St. Mark in Canopus, which is near where they were martyred, and their relics were transferred from here to Menouthis around 414 AD. This Egyptian village was the centre of a popular healing shrine attributed to the goddess Isis. It was Patriarch Theophilus who wanted to cleanse this village by building a church dedicated to the four evangelists, but he died, and the cult continued to flourish. However, his plans were fulfilled by his successor, the Holy Patriarch Cyril. From that time, Menouthis began to be purified of demonic influence, and by the prayers of Saint Cyrus and St. John, they began many miracles and healings. So many reported miracles and healings took place that, in the 7th century, Saint Sophronius of Jerusalem wrote a detailed account of over 70 miracles, after he himself was healed of an incurable eye condition by an apparition of the saints. The relics of Saint Cyrus and John were eventually transferred in the 7th century to Rome, where they were placed in the Church of Santa Passera. So as we've seen, there is actually very little surviving information about the early lives of Saint Cyrus and John, but what we do have comes from later traditions, from the accounts like the Encomium of Sophronius and various Synaxaria, which sometimes differ in detail, but preserve the memory of two men who were transformed by faith, asceticism, and ultimately martyrdom. What is remarkable, however, is not the scarcity of information, but what remains despite it. From their ministry of healing in life, to their courage under persecution, to the extraordinary miracles attributed to their relics after their death, their story left a lasting impact, an imprint across Egypt, the wider Christian world, and eventually even Rome. In particular, the tradition of over 70 recorded miracles shows just how amazing these saints were. As always, I'll leave sources and additional reading in the description below, where you can explore the texts and traditions behind their lives and miracles in the greater depth. And that's the story of Saint Cyrus and Saint John. So thanks for watching.